Well, welcome everybody. My name's Amelia Vogler, grounding and energy medicine specialist, and your host in the Energy Magazine exclusive interview series. Today, our guest is Dr. Lori Hops. Lori is the president of the Association of Comprehensive Energy Psychology and is certified as a diplomat in comprehensive energy psychology, a certified logosynthesis practitioner, and a Reiki master. Lori is also an established writer and instructor on intuition development, self-care, and logosynthesis. Welcome, Lori.
Hello, thank you so much for this lovely time together.
Oh my gosh, it's our pleasure. So, Lori, I want to start because you're so clearly passionate about mental health, and not just mental health, but mental health with an energy focus. And I'd love to hear how what your path was like and how you sort of landed in the place where you are now.
Oh, great question. Thanks for asking. So I am a licensed psychologist in California and was conventionally trained in mental health in that way at the University of Houston with my master's and doctorate and my internship in California at Kaiser Permanente. And so there I was trained in cognitive behavioral and saw children and families and had a long career working that way. But what was under the surface was the energy work that was very dear to my heart and personal and unnamed until I was farther along into adulthood. And that's because I had natural abilities that I didn't have a way of understanding what it really was about. When I was young, my grandmother, who was very intuitive, saw some abilities in me. And she let me know that that was fine, but to not share them. So I'm honoring her memory, but I'm not listening to her advice because it was from a different era and it was for my protection. And I understand that. She was raised not far from Salem, Massachusetts on the East Coast many years ago, and knew about the witch trials and what happens to people when there's suspicion and distrust with intuition. And so she knew things like when women were pregnant and the gender of the child, even when maybe the woman wasn't supposed to be pregnant. And so she learned to just kind of keep her mouth shut. And so I had this kind of awareness internally that helped me with clients because I would dream about things before I met them that would help me understand them when they came in for the first time, or psych testing that I did with foster kids, and I could see snapshots of their life that would help me kind of unlock things because I only had a few hours with them. So this was a great tool. But on the other hand, there was a lot of fear about like, is this right? And what's this about? And so I did reading on my own and kind of kept things quiet until I got pregnant. And then I started seeing things in the room. I would wake up in the middle of the night and see chalk, three-dimensional chalk images. And I thought I was going crazy. So I went to my supervisor who I trusted and I said, I think I might need to be hospitalized. And she said, what are you talking about? So I told her about the images that frightened me. And she said, tell me more about the images. And I thought, oh, she's just going to take notes to be able to like have more evidence, how I'm like unfit to serve, the public. But what it turned out that it was is a whole network of images that not only she, but others had seen that were in books, particular books. So she said, I think that your child might be very psychic and it's opening your third eye. And I'm like, okay, now maybe I have to worry about her. But anyway, it worked out and I got more grounded and more understanding of what was going on, and thus begun kind of my deep dive into learning more formally about energy practices. And I would say that my goal is to be a bridge between the worlds of conventional 3D reality and this dynamic of energy work that can be used for healing that is kind of innate to us.
Yeah, Lori, what an interesting background. I love the way our ancestors' voices guide us, even when it doesn't sound like direct guidance, like the don't go this way is just as important as the go this way.
Yes.
And then we get to tease that all out.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, I know, our intuitive capacities and capabilities is so important in healing work. And I know you also, I was reading about that you teach a class on intuition, and I'm wondering if you know or could speak to the role of intuition, not in from a practitioner standpoint point so much as like a self-care standpoint, like using our intuition sort of in our everyday way. Do you have any ideas about that?
Yeah, a couple
Okay.
thousand.
A couple of thousand.
So in the developing intuition classes that I teach, there's 4 levels at the moment that are 6 hours each. So there's a lot of curriculum around developing intuition for self-care and for working with other people. But I think that basically what it comes down to is understanding your internal GPS that you were given that you may not have the instruction manual for. So it's like when you're driving a new car or you're using a new software program or something, you're trying to play an instrument that you're unfamiliar with, or you're learning a new dance or language. If you don't have the skill set to understand what the maker intended, you're going to feel lost. So you'll see the blinking lights and you'll hear the sounds and all of that, or the language will be fast and you'll feel confused. And you won't know, and you'll think maybe you're inadequate or something's wrong with you, or that you're foolish or you can't figure it out. Or maybe you'll feel like overwhelmed and want to push it away. So this is what happens when we don't have a language system within ourselves that's developed. But these are things that can easily be learned. So we're all equipped with sensory systems naturally in the body. And our intuitive senses use that as a bridge between the here and now sensory awareness and the subtle energy awareness. So for example, seeing with your eyes, or seeing insight into situations, or having some sort of vision about the past or the future that maybe you haven't physically visited. So that would be a link between the physical and the subtle. And all of our sense organs have that kind of communication. And so the better that you know yourself, the more easily you can be open to hearing the messages and then figuring out what they mean. It's like a dance. So you can ask questions, you can receive answers, you can shape the conversation.
Well, Lori, would you mind leading us in a practice or an exercise, maybe of working with that, the space between physical sight and subtle sight? Or you could take another sense if you wanted, just to give us an idea of how that bridging could function for us.
Certainly. So let me give you a choice.
Okay.
Yeah, since it's interactive. And so we can do something with sight, with smell, or with sound, or with different parts of the body. So do you have a preference?
Oh gosh, all of them. But I think, I think, just in terms of maybe even creating a nice bridge between your article, which was about the somatics. What if we work in the body?
Okay. Very good. So this one is about different locations in your body. So imagine that your body is a map and that you are going to be an avatar that goes visiting and to different parts of your body. And if you can't follow along, that's fine. Just make it up or wait for the next one.
Sure.
So the first one is to rub your hands together and shake them off. Take some breaths. And if you have some water, maybe drink some water. And just take a deep breath and just become aware of your right hand. And then become aware of your left foot. And just gently guide your awareness to your right elbow, to your left shoulder, to the tip of your nose, to your back teeth, top of your head, and finally the space between your eyebrows. And if you want extra credit, become aware of both of your earlobes. And then take a breath and come on back around. So some people may or may not have been able to follow along with that, but that was about sensory awareness inside the body. And it's very important to be aware inside the body that you're actually inside, so that then you can get messages. Because if you're people pleasing, or you're out and worrying, or you're in the past or the future, you're not going to be able to be as present as possible. And so this is about right, left, back, front, up, down, inside, outside. I kind of mixed it around a bit.
Yeah, that was cool, Lori. I got a sense of, really traveling myself in 3 dimensions, like you were saying. And I was surprised at my mind, because my mind is usually very chatty, like trying to figure it out. But I was really able to just follow, just really focus and follow. And I thought that was just really interesting, because I'm such a curious person, that my mind was really dedicated to that short practice. You think there's anything to that like, because I was so in my body, my brain just decided it could take a vacation or something else, or not interesting?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's our dynamic together, and you're in the role right now, and so am I, in terms of an interview. And yet with an exercise, we get to kind of just be a little bit more human and present within ourselves. So, and I don't know your personal journey with somatic awareness, if that was new for you or not. It may not have been. So who knows, but good for you, whatever. It sounds like it was enjoyable. So that's great.
Yeah,
And
it was cool. Thank you, Lori.
And the link to somatics from that is that our body gives us signals all the time about how we're feeling and what we're experiencing, sometimes even before things come in, like a clenched stomach, a clenched jaw, the hair standing up on our body, trembling, sweating, cold chills, and so on. So that's the kinesthetic awareness, the body awareness. And so practicing that, bringing your awareness to different parts, is kind of a foundation for you to go to the next step of intuitive body awareness, of hearing the messages and figuring out what they mean.
It's so interesting the way that we are architected through these different levels of awareness.
Yeah.
I was also exploring your website a little bit, and when I was reading about your intuition development class, I was so struck by this idea of the role of water in intuition development. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that? It was so, I know we're 2/3 water, so, not knowing anything other than that, and that water is so encodable, I was just so curious about what, a little more about how to use water.
Oh, how to use it. Okay, so that comes from the level that I've created around the chakras and intuition, and specifically the sacral chakra, so around the hips. And this is the seat of creativity and generativity. And it's also where a lot of our emotions are stored, all throughout our psyche, but especially there. And so water is a perfect medium for this, because water also, from a psychological point, talks about the unconscious and emotion. And so water can be in the different states, as we know. It can be frozen, it can be flowing, it can be steam or vapor, depending upon temperature change. And the same is true with energy. Energy can be frozen, it can be in flow, it can evaporate, it can heat up and boil, just like our feelings. So when using intuition, it's kind of nice to marry these different lenses.
Oh, cool.
And one of the ways that you can, I think, naturally happens for people, and they may not be aware of it. Oftentimes we hear about creativity or intuition happening when someone's in water. I went for a swim, I was washing the dishes, I was taking a bath, I was taking a shower, and suddenly I knew the answer. I had the dream, I saw the insight, I started crying and put it together. I fell apart, whatever it is. Water is our first home in the amniotic fluid. And we are mostly made of water. And we came from water. We're water babies. Wow. And so water rocks us, and it interpenetrates us, and it soothes us, and it washes us. So it's really nice to be able to use water with intuition in physical means, and also in metaphoric and imagery. Yeah, I'm seeing, is there a picture of water behind you? Is that what I'm seeing? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I have I love to visit the ocean. I love to visit a stream. I love to visit a lake. So it's always been important to me, and perhaps I know a little more why now.
Oh, interesting.
Thank you.
And yeah, and it can come in your dreams too. Look for water in your dreams.
I will. I
Yeah.
will. Thank you.
Mm.
So I wanted to switch gears just a little bit, because another thing that I found just very curious and compelling about your work was the logosynthesis piece of your practice. And I'm just a word nerd. I love language and I love, the poetics and, the power of language and healing, and how we architect our lives around what has been told to us, like that story of your grandmother, or what we tell ourselves, and how that these messages can get stuck or set us free. And I'm just so curious about what logosynthesis is. I know it has something to do with language, I think.
Yeah, true. Very good. Yes. So Willem Lammers is a Dutch psychologist living in Switzerland, and he he created the school of logosynthesis about 16 years ago. In fact, I think they're having their summer conference right now. But anyway, what it is it's a combination of energy principles and language to help words move energy. So in the beginning was the word. Words have energy, and they can bless and they can curse. And oftentimes it's the words that other people tell us about ourselves or the world that we use to build our systems and models that become almost frozen like statues at times, and then no longer serve us, because maybe they were active and living at the time, but now it's been 20 years or even a minute and it's no longer useful, but we still have these museums of statues of words and their energy. And so you use the words and language to be able to dissolve that back into the flow and essence of what we naturally are, while working in the live world of the matrix, as he calls it.
Wow.
So it's very powerful. That the key to it, it's based in lots of different systems of hypnosis and energy work and psychodynamics and neurolinguistic programming and other things, Gestalt. But the key to it, I think, is finding your trigger. And your trigger is usually in the body. So we kind of come back to this that we practiced with awareness in the body, and also what's in your personal space. So there are things that we carry from others, like their dirty laundry, or kind of like lint that gets stuck to our sweaters. And then also we lose parts of ourselves along the way, almost like bits of us drip away. And so the logosynthesis is helpful to rebalance that, to eject what is not ours and send it to where it truly belongs, not needing to know where that is. And then also reclaiming ourselves. So the bits that have been lost along the way, we come back into wholeness. And then someone is much more balanced, focused, and ready to kind of take on the world at that point.
Oh, it's so interesting. Would you mind sharing like a client story or a specific example? I mean, obviously no names or anything like that, but just to give us an idea of how it works.
Yeah, I'll give an example from Dr. Lammers himself when he created
Sure.
this. So he had a client who had fallen in a subway and had lost awareness and found herself hours later and couldn't remember the fall and so on. But she was injured, but she made it through. And ever since then, she seemed like she couldn't integrate her physical self. She would go to reach for the door and she think the handle is here, but the handle's here.
Oh,
So
yeah.
so she came to see him and he saw something fuzzy next to her and thought, oh, I'm tired. But she said, I feel like I'm standing beside my shoes. And so the idea was like a split, like her energy had split off. So he did some work with her to try to bring her back into alignment. And when it happened, she remembered everything. She remembered the fall, she remembered all of this, and she felt integrated. And so he started to get curious about how words can help us bring back ourselves into flow, because there's part of us that are frozen and cut off.
Oh, that's so fascinating. I
Mhm.
know in my studies of healing touch, in the very first level, we look at terminology that people come in with. Maybe it's the second level, but it's, I'm beside myself.
Yes.
I feel 10 steps in front of myself all the time.
Yep.
I feel split in half at
Yep.
these sort of cues.
I feel
So,
cut off.
it's amazing. I suppose on some level, that's the bridge that you're talking about between the physical and the subtle. And that if we can cultivate that into those intuitive lenses to help see ourselves beyond those presentations, it can help us understand what we need to do
Yes.
for our healing.
Yes.
Oh, what a really fascinating type of a modality,
Yeah.
perhaps a lack of more specific words. It sounds like an extraordinary process and empowering too, because it also feels like language is something that's very central to all of us. So I suppose, is there an empowerment piece? Is the patient or the client using language as well to bring themselves back?
It's a speak and repeat process.
Oh
And
yeah.
so once you get down to the exact trigger, like for example, the smell of the airbag as it exploded, you know, and time froze, and you can't get that smell out of your mind. You keep dreaming about it and so on from the accident. When you get down to the actual trigger, then there's some sentences that the person leading you says, and you say them at the same time. But if you're too overwhelmed, the clinician can say it on your behalf right then.
Oh,
And then you just wait and pause after each sentence. The three sentences are about the removing what's not yours, like the airbag powder, that's not part of you,
oh
and
yeah.
coming back with what is yours, like the sense of shock, and then coming back into wholeness. And then you just pause and wait and see whether the distress you had in the beginning has shifted. And so it's amazing how quickly those sentences can do some incredible change work.
I can
Um,
understand that. And it just it feels like it's so natural from the way that we learn language, and we learn, because we learn how to speak by repeating. And so I
true,
think it feels like it's also kind of allowing us to relearn, at
true.
that very primal level.
Yes.
Uh,
Similar to other energy practices where you're calming the body in the space of distress, like with
mhm.
tapping for EFT or something like that, or chakra work, where you're feeling some sort of suffering. And then you're telling your body, it's safe, it's okay. And then the body says, oh, yeah, hey, contemporarily, right now, it's true.
Yeah.
I'm fine. And it's almost like the memory gets, they say, reconsolidated, like it gets shifted around. Like when I was a kid, we had etch a sketches. So you would
Oh
have
yeah.
sand, yeah, and you would roll the dials and it would cause these magnets to create a design. And then when you were done, you would shake it and
Yeah.
it would be a blank slate. And so that's kind of what's happening. You're like, let's bring up the drawing and then shake it.
Oh,
It
cool.
dislodges it. Yep.
Cool
Mhm.
metaphor.
Yeah.
Lori, your article was focused on somatic practices, like we've been discussing a little bit. And I'm curious about what are some of the problems that you see those somatic modalities solving beyond, say, traditional counseling or energy medicine alone? Because there's something really fascinating about when you put these two things together.
Yeah, so it's cognitive somatic energy practices like EFT, emotional freedom technique, or a thought field therapy, things like this. And what they are is a bridge between the cognitive, the neck up, and the rest of the body, the somatic, at the same time. So you can do, let's say, Reiki, where you're doing hands near or on or at a distance, where you're shifting the energy fields through different esoteric and physical means. But you don't need the story, which is fine. Other times, if you're doing talk therapy, it's all about the story. And it's really not so much, maybe you'll do breathing or something, but it's really not about body awareness. But to bring the two together is an integrative thing. I think that it's possible that the cognitive somatic practices might not be as much needed for as long in other cultures where we don't have this split. We're kind of walking around in half or 1/6 and 5/6, split off sometimes, and especially not coming from the heart. So anything that kind of reintegrates that system, which is a whole system that we're born with, I think brings us into greater vitality. And so that's one of the beauties of this work. It's what I was drawn to be able to use things like chakra and biofield and so on with empirical science and talk therapy and energy work all together.
Yeah.
Along with intuition.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like at the heart of bringing ourselves home to the fullness of ourselves. So I'm curious if you'd like to offer folks a little more information about, I know you've got some great classes coming up. I know you've got tip of the day on your Facebook page.
Yes.
I'd love to have you tell people how they can get in touch with you, how they can find you, a little bit about your classes.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so my website has a lot of information. That's probably the best place to start, and that's www.drlorihop like Paul, S like Sam.com. So drlorihops.com. And I do offer these 6-hour, 3-session, 2 hours each intuition classes that start, level 1 starts about every 2 months. I start another cohort. And so reach out to me, look at the website if you're interested, send me an email and I'll let you know when the next classes start. And then they progress. So level 1 is the basics of intuition of 6 hours. And then the others go slowly up through the chakras. So we start then at the root with family, relationships, and the earth. And then we talked a little bit about the second chakra and so on. They go from there. And then also on Facebook, I have a tip a day that I've been doing ever since April 6th of 2020 to help myself through the pandemic. And I thought I was using tips every day to kind of keep me sane. And maybe somebody else would want to read 1 or 2. And so I decided to do it until I felt complete with that process. And so we're, I think, on day 450. So there's still more. And every time I say, maybe today's the last day, I come up with something else. So there are tips on coping and also on thriving. I have stuff there that's poetry, things on spirituality, on physical tips, on mental, and whatever's coming up in my life or I see around me that I think might be useful for somebody else. So we don't have to be friends on Facebook. I publicly post them and you can enjoy that.
Lori, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Wonderful to talk with you.
Thank you so much.